All right, guys, I think we are live. And still not.
I can see you now.
You can see me? Well, mine here. Look how high tech I was trying to be, and then now I'm not. It's not even working for some reason. How about that? Anyways, well, Susan says she can see me, so I'm going to assume that's good enough. So, hey, everybody, and welcome to the Bad Weather Podcast. Sorry, we're not together tonight, but oh, here I am. Oh, look, check me out. It's infinity. It's me. So, all right. Yeah, let me turn the light on up here and see if I can get the shadow off of my head. Oh, that's better. I look less like the crypt keeper now. All right, cool. Sorry we're not able to be together tonight. Mother Nature had other plans than our normal Wednesday night festivities, but I appreciate you guys coming out to join me for the Bad Weather Podcast. Please say hey in the chat so I can get some shout outs and see who all is here. And while everybody's kind of populating, getting in here, I want to say I have a lesson tonight. We're going to talk about 1 Samuel 25, which is what we were going to talk about tonight anyways. And so we're going to do that. And then I have a game to play. So if somebody is feeling adventuresome and wants to do the game with me, that person is going to have to call me on my phone. And we're going to play, if you know the game, Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I have set that up to play it on here. So if you're interested in that, what you're going to have to do is decide amongst yourselves who's going to be the victim, because I only have one version of the game ready to go. But we'll get somebody out and play the game and see if we can get a big winner. Now, the game is called Who Wants to Be a Millionaire? I'm going to tell you right now, nobody's getting any money at all. If it's going to be a prize, it's going to be whatever Susan approves for me to spend on this prize, which will probably be less than $4. So that seems to be the limit of what we're doing. But it would be the nicest thing I could find for $4 or less. So anybody who you guys kind of fight amongst yourselves, and once we get through the lesson, we'll have a chance to play Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, which everybody's going to participate. If you know that game, there's some lifelines and some different things that are a part of that. And so long as my computer doesn't crash, we'll give it a try. So whoever is up for attempting our first ever game show here on the Bad Weather Podcast, we'll see what we can do. All right, a couple shout outs to some folks who are here, and Amy Hawkshead, who is fresh off of vacation. And telling me she had a great time, but she's glad to be home, and probably glad to be home because it's not fit to be outside tonight. Any of you who I was kind of regretting canceling tonight because I came out of the church about an hour and a half ago, and I thought it just, the sidewalk didn't seem bad and whatever. So I was walking to my car and dang near face planted trying to get in my car, and I thought, well, the parking lot's terrible. So I'm going to take that as an omen that I did the right thing making the call tonight. Anyways, is what it is. So, Amy, welcome back. Hey, Val McAllister, and appreciate you tuning in tonight. Hi, Tammy. I think you're a newbie here on the Bad Weather Podcast. Appreciate you tuning in here tonight. And Susan, who's in the other room, who's hearing me talk, and my mouth movements are not matching my mouth, and I'm sure she's appreciating that all over the place. Terry and Nancy. Terry, thank you for your help earlier today. Terry, some of you clicked on and saw it. Terry and I were doing some experimenting to see if I could figure out how to do the game of the night. So I actually got it to work. Terry is in the chat, and he can verify that I got it to work then. It will probably crash here tonight, but that's just how it goes. But thanks, Terry, for your help earlier today. Nancy, good to have you here with us too. I should make an official announcement that Terry will be the recipient of the autographed football on Sunday, simply because he picked the highest score for the Philadelphia Eagles. He actually was pretty close. He was only off by 2 points on both scores. He was 2 points too low on the Philadelphia score and 2 points too high on the Kansas City score. So really close, but he's our big winner, and we'll be having a signing ceremony of some sort on Sunday. So appreciate Terry and Nancy. Glad you guys are out. Lorelai McAllister's in the house. How about that, besties? How are you doing? And glad you're here, Lorelai. Appreciate you tuning in. Hi, Nick and Mindy. Appreciate you guys coming in. Now, Nick and Mindy, actually, I'm going to ask Nick and Mindy, and I'm also going to ask Terry and Nancy, are you guys all watching from the same house, just different phones, devices of some sort, because that's what Susan and I are doing here. We actually have 3 devices on. She's on, I'm on here, and then for those of you who didn't see, I'm on here. Here I am. There, see? So, yep, and cool. So Amy Hogshead, trip was fantastic. I got to sing with my dad. Sounds like a story we may need to hear, Amy. I'd like to hear more about this singing career of yours. Hey, Beth and Carl, appreciate you guys tuning in here tonight. Aaron Powell, hi from the whole Powell family. So I'm assuming we've got Lindsay and Grant and Ellie all in the house. Appreciate you guys tuning in, and see if we can all learn something here together tonight. Thanks, Nick. Yeah, country roads were getting slick. I figured that here in town they weren't too bad, but again, in the parking lot was awful. So, hi, Bev DePoy. Tell Chuck we said hello. Hope you guys doing well. And let's see. Lorelei says, "I love you too, Susan." Nothing for me. Nothing for me, really. That's how it's going to be. All right, whatever. Let's see. Oh, Mindy, yes, we have you on the TV, and we're logging in from our phone so we can chat. Cool. That's how we get my numbers up all the way up to 20, as you can see I'm at now. Awesome. Nancy, both on all phones. Val McAllister. So we got Val, Sean, and Lorelei all on. That's cool. And yeah. So anyways, I appreciate you guys getting my stats up. It helps with my ego, and I appreciate that. Lorelei says that I'm okay. How do I kick people out of the chat? Let me see if all right. I have to figure that out before we're done here. So, all right, cool. Well, tonight, I hope you've got your Bibles, or if you want to click on the computer, or we're going to be looking at 1 Samuel 25. Now, in order to to talk about 1 Samuel 25, we have to remind ourselves where we came from, 1 Samuel 24, which is what the passage we studied just last week. Now, the interesting thing about 1 Samuel 24 to 25 is the great big change that David makes. Now, if you remember last week, we talked about how David was in the cave and Saul goes in to relieve himself. Remember, I drove the going to the bathroom joke into the ground, if you'll recall that. So David's hiding in the cave. His men are saying, knock him off. He's right there. David says, nope, not treating the king that way. Cuts off the robe. Saul leaves. David goes out to kind of wave it in his face a little bit. And but the one thing that I need you to realize, because it's going to come into play for this week's passage, is I got to quit watching myself in this other camera over here. That I want you to pay attention to is the great change that David makes. So last week, very humble. This is the king. Saul may have done some terrible things. Saul may have aggravated me. I may want to, do all these terrible things because Saul wants to kill me. And obviously that's not a positive experience. So all these bad things are happening. But David says, look, he's still the king. And we're not going to kill the king, especially when he's on the toilet, because that's just not how you do things. So David was very humble, very respectful, very measured, very thought out. Had this entire scenario all worked out of what he wanted to do. And so he knew how this was going to work. It all figured out. Great. Well, this week we're going to see a little bit of a different side of David, and that's why David is such a fantastic character. I'm very sorry that we weren't able to be together tonight, because Dr. Nutt and I actually met earlier today, and I'm very, very sorry that you're not going to hear what he was working on, because he had a very interesting angle of comparing, respect for an office, but not necessarily respect for a person. And he was going to juxtapose that with the conversation between Jesus and Pilate after Jesus had been arrested. It was actually fascinating. I'm sorry we weren't able to have that here tonight, but just a very interesting kind of juxtaposition where Jesus, when he was in front of Pilate, was very respectful to him because of who he was. Jesus didn't have any problem with Pilate. He knew Pilate was in a horrible situation, and so it was an interesting thing. So we'll probably come back and revisit that, because I think Dr. Nutt really had a head of steam going on it. So, all right. So anyways, so you've got David, respectful of the king, not going to kill the king, particularly when he's on the toilet, just not going to do it. All right. So now that sets up, we immediately go from 1 Samuel 24. Now we're stepping into 1 Samuel 25. So if you want to open your Bibles or click open your app or whatever it is you're going to be following along on here, I've got my piece of paper here. I got a couple of pieces of this I want to show you now. Okay, so David had this conversation with Saul, and if you remember, I didn't make a big deal out of this, so you might have missed it. But at the end of 1 Samuel 24, David and Saul kind of go their opposite, their separate ways. So for a little while, there's peace. So because Saul basically said, you're going to be a great king someday, and I hope you'll remember my descendants, and so on and so forth. And they both leave. So Saul is willing to kind of let this go, at least for now. So David is going back to his stronghold. Saul is going back to his palace, and just kind of, at least again for the time being, let bygones be bygones. So since David doesn't have to worry about Saul anymore, or at least currently, he looks at these guys who are following him around, these 400 guys that he didn't recruit that are just kind of here now, and go, what we should do? We should celebrate. Since we're not running for Saul anymore, we don't have to worry about what's going on. We got everything straightened out. Everything's great. We should have a celebration. You guys remember the guy who we lived near? His house was near us. He had all those sheep, and he had great wealth because he had all these sheep and goats and stuff. Because I'm looking outside and it's sheep shearing season. Say that one 3 times fast. And he says we should find out from him, see if he'll give us some party supplies or give us some stuff to celebrate or some provisions of some sort. So what David does is he brings out some of his young guys, and the young guys come up there. He said, "Hey, why don't you guys run an errand for me? Why don't you run over to talk to this guy and ask him if he's willing to share with us, since this is kind of a special time of the year." So they go over to see this guy and say, "Hey, David is, up the way here, and we sure would like to have some provisions, if that'd be okay." And we'll just say it doesn't go well. So that's where we're going to pick up today. Now, the other thing you have to remember here, and I want you to keep in mind, because I don't want this this point to get away from us. If you look here in 1 Samuel 25, the very first verse says, "Now Samuel had died." Now, don't forget who Samuel was. We haven't read about him very much, but I want you to notice, what's the name of the book that we're in? Oh, yes, it's named Samuel. This is Samuel's story. And Samuel was the prophet who God said, I want you to go down and find this guy named Jesse, because one of his sons is going to be king. We read about that back in 1 Samuel 16. So Samuel, and David don't spend a lot of time together, but Samuel would have been a pretty significant part of David's life. Samuel was the one who poured the oil to say, you're going to be the next king. So even though David and Samuel didn't hang out a lot, we don't read a lot of time where they're interacting with each other, Samuel would have been a very important character, a very important character is the wrong word, very important influence in David's life. So it was his funeral, which means Samuel had passed away. So David was upset, as anybody would be when somebody they knew and loved passed away. And so in this very emotional state, so he had this emotional time with Saul, where he and Saul at least mended fences a little bit. And Samuel passes away, and Samuel's buried. So there's a lot going on in David's life. So in this, he now sends these messengers over to talk to this guy. So let's read here a little bit. Okay. Now Samuel died, and all Israel gathered for his funeral, big funeral. And obviously, since David and Saul were on okay terms at this point, David was able to attend. They buried him in the house of Ramah, and David moved down to the wilderness of Maon. There was a wealthy man from Maon who owned property near the town of Carmel. He had 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats. I have no idea how rich that makes him. That seems like a lot, so he must have had pretty good wealth. 3,000 sheep and 1,000 goats, and it was sheep shearing time. This man's name was Nabal, and his wife, Abigail, was a sensible and beautiful woman. Okay. The guy's name means fool. If you look up what the word Nabal means, and actually his wife is going to reference that later in this very passage. His mom named him fool, and the guy ended up being a hothead. I mean, I can't see why, right? But that's what the name Nabal means fool. His wife Abigail, and again, I'm assuming this must have been an arranged marriage, was a sensible and beautiful woman. Now, I want you to keep that word sensible. Keep hold of that, because we're going to come back to that in a minute. Okay, sensible, beautiful woman. But Nabal, a descendant of Caleb, y'all, anybody here remember Caleb? If you remember who Caleb is, put it in the chat right now. Get in the chat, tell me who Caleb is, if you remember. Anybody remember who Caleb was? He was a pretty significant character in the Moses story, actually. Somebody's cheating and yelling to me from the other room and getting the right answer. Anybody else? He was Joshua's brother. He was involved. I don't know if they were brothers. Maybe brothers. But what he did, it had to do with Joshua. That is correct. If you remember when Moses was leading the people and they were coming into the promised land, they sent a couple of spies in. They sent in 10 spies. 10 spies came back and said, this place is amazing. Look at this thing of grapes we brought back. It's the size of a man. It's huge. And of the 10 spies, 8 of them said, yeah, not only are the grapes huge, but the people are also huge. There's no way we could take this. 2 guys said, oh, yeah, God said we can do it. We got this. And those 2 guys were Joshua and Caleb. Now, Joshua gets a book of the Bible. So if you want to read about a lot of maiming and killing, go read the book of Joshua, because a lot of that went on in there. But the other guy was Caleb's. And if you read the story through, only 2 guys who were over the age of 40 got into the promised land. And you guessed it, it was Joshua and Caleb. So the fact that he was a descendant of Caleb means he came from, I guess, what I call good stock. Should have known better than to act the way he acts in this passage. But being that he was a descendant of a prime character in the life of the people there, means that he would have been from a leading family. Again, should have known better than to act the way he does. All right, so he's a descendant of Caleb. He was crude and mean in all his dealings. When David heard that Nabal was shearing sheep, he sent 10 of his young men to Carmel with a message for Nabal. Okay. This is ancient emails, what we're seeing here. What's email in those days? You tell somebody and that person goes and tells whoever they want. That's how social media worked back in the day. So here is David's Facebook post sent by these 10 young men. Peace and prosperity to you, your family, and everything you own. I'm told it's sheep shearing season. And while your shepherds stayed among us near Carmel, we never harmed them, and nothing was ever stolen from them. Ask your own men. They'll tell you this is true. So would you be kind to us since we have come to you at a time of celebration? Please share any provisions you might have on hand with us and with your friend David. Again, nice invitation, knowing that you've got great provisions and great resources. Whatever you want to share a little bit, we were good to you guys when we were sharing pasture lands and stuff. We didn't fight with you guys. We watched out for your sheep. We didn't steal anything from you. We were good neighbors. Why don't you pay us back? Okay. So verse 9, David's young men gave this message to Nabal in David's name, and they waited for a reply. Again, much like a Facebook post, right? So they tell Nabal this message, hey, we've gotten along great. Just wondered if you could flow a little our way and let us have the celebration. Here is Nabal's response. Who is this fellow David? Nabal sneered to these young men. Who does the son of Jesse think he is? There are lots of servants these days who run away from their masters. Should I take my bread and my water and my meat that I've slaughtered from my shearers and give it to a band of outlaws who comes from who knows where? Okay. So basically, Nabal's response here, he does like mass disrespect. Because first of all, he says David is nothing more than a servant of Saul, and maybe that servant ought to behave himself a little better. He also says, who are these people who are with him? Which honestly that's a legit question. Even David's like, yeah, I don't know these guys either. They just showed up one day. So it's not like these are the most respected people in the countryside. So all these people are around and all this stuff is happening. And Nabal is like, I don't really feel like sharing my stuff. And I'm not really happy with you guys being here either. So he gives a very snide response, talking about how David should know his place and doesn't know his place. And as any of you could attest, nobody likes to be talked to like that. So that was Nabal's response. I forget it. I don't care about David. Who is David anyways? Whatever. Okay. So David's young men returned and told them what Nabal said. Okay, so they go back and report what happened. Get your swords, was David's reply as he strapped on his own. Then 400 men started off with David and 200 remained behind to guard their equipment. It's a very fascinating response, is it not? I mean, he wouldn't kill Saul because Saul was the king, but Saul has done a lot worse stuff to David than this guy Nabal did. All Nabal did was be disrespectful. I mean, true. Speak out of turn, maybe. not be generous and hospitable? Probably. But I'd say if you're saying who was worse to David, I don't think there's any comparison here. I mean, Saul literally tried to kill him multiple times. All Nabal did is said, how are you sharing my stuff? And who's David anyways? You guys get lost. I mean, that's basically all he said. This is a very different response. Now, I understand Nabal's not the king, but Nabal was still a leading family. I told you he was a descendant of Caleb, which would have given him some clout in the community. But David is not messing around here, which goes to show, again, this story makes the one we looked at last week where David showed restraint, a level head, thinking and thinking ahead and doing the right thing. This story makes that one look even more, makes it stand out even more, because here David's like, I'm not messing with this Nabal guy. Let's just go cut his head off and solve this right now. So again, to show David had it in him. And I think part of the point, I mean, there's many things happening here, but part of the point of this story is that we shouldn't understand David as being, well, he's just kind of weak, you know, he should have knocked Saul off when he had the chance, and he was kind of timid and didn't take the opportunity. That is not at all what's going on here. David ain't afraid to go kill somebody. Again, I'm sorry that has to come off the way it does, but he's not afraid to do that because he's ready to do it here. We're just one chapter later. He's ready to go kill this guy Nabal just for a sneering response. So David and his 400 men are going over to knock Nabal off and teach him a lesson that you don't talk this way about David. Okay, so this is happening. The servants of David go back to report to David what happened, and now we have an unsung hero in this passage, which shows up here in verse 14. Meanwhile, one of Nabal's servants went out to Abigail. This tells me everybody kind of knew who was in charge here, kind of knew who the level head, kind of knew who to go talk to when the chips were down. And it wasn't Nabal, obviously, it was Abigail. And this servant watching Nabal just blow a gasket at these guys, he's gone, oh my word. Well, somebody's got to do something. So he runs and gets his wife, I think the really person in charge here. So he runs off to Abigail, and here's what he says. Abigail told her, verse 14, David sent messengers from the wilderness to greet our master, but he screamed, Nabal screamed insults at them. These men have been very good to us. They never we never suffered any harm from them. Nothing was stolen from us the whole time we were there. In fact, day and night, they were like a wall of protection to us and the sheep. You need to know this and figure out what to do. For there is going to be trouble for our master and his whole family, and by extension, us. He's so ill-tempered, nobody can even talk to him. Now, we have no rating here of Abigail's response, but I'm pretty sure I know what it was. It was this. Right? That's the response. Because she's done this before. This is not the first time she's had to smooth over for Captain Big Mouth. So she's like, oh, she's crying out loud, this guy. So she's gonna fix this. All right, verse 18. Abigail wasted no time. She quickly gathered 200 loaves of bread, 2 wineskins full of wine, 5 sheep that had been slaughtered, nearly a bushel of roasted grain, 100 clusters of grapes, and 200 fig cakes. She packed them on donkeys and said to her servants, "Now go on ahead. I will follow you shortly." Now, take a quick look here. How much stuff did she actually take? All right, so let's run this down. She had what? 200 loaves of bread. Okay. 2 wineskins full of wine. Wineskins would have been like maybe a liter, maybe a gallon a piece at most. So a couple gallons of wine. 5 sheep that have been slaughtered. You got an idea how much meat that would have been. And nearly a bushel of roasted grain. So not even a whole bushel, but nearly a bushel. 100 clusters of raisins. Again, I have no idea how much that is. And 200 fig cakes. When I say fig cakes, don't think 9 by 13 cake. Think Fig Newton. That's what we're talking about here. So not great big things. How many people were coming with David? Answer, 400. This is not enough for everybody. This is not even the amount of food they were actually asking for in the first place. They were asking for probably a lot more than this because they were planning a celebration for all 400 people. And the amount of food talked about here is not going to be anywhere near enough to do that. This is not, here's what you asked for. Here is a peace offering. There's plenty more where this came from. This is what I could gather up at a moment's notice. So she's not planning to respond to David's original request. She's simply trying to stop a slaughter from happening. She's trying to be the level head here. Okay. All right. Go ahead and I'll follow you shortly. But she didn't tell her husband Nabal what she was doing. Verse 20. As she was riding her donkey into a mountain ravine, she saw David and his men coming toward her. Okay, so she's coming in one side and David's kind of coming along the other, and they're going to meet in this ravine. And verse 21, David had just been saying, a lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen. He has repaid me evil for good. May God strike me, even kill me, if even one man of his household is still alive tomorrow morning. Okay. Guys, this is a guy thing right here, right? David's pride has been wounded. He has been disrespected. He's obviously not horrendously thrilled with this development. So he's angry, and he's doing that thing where he's walking and talking to himself. He's not talking to anybody in particular here, right? He's walking along going, oh, that guy, I'm going to get him good, and I'm going to, that thing all of we guys do. So he's walking along. He's having his pity party. He's super ticked off, and he's just dreaming about righting this wrong and doing this thing, okay? So with this full head of steam that he's coming up there with, and he's super mad, and he's just ready to rip this guy apart. Verse 23. When Abigail saw David, she quickly got off her donkey and bowed low before him. She fell at his feet and said, now, just going to stop right there. So super ticked off David is going through this ravine. He's on the warpath. I mean, he's ready to really throw down and make something happen. And all of a sudden, there kneels Abigail. Did I mention she was sensible and beautiful? Did I mention that yet? So David's all mad, and he's like, hold up. Stop. Everybody stop. I'm sorry, ma'am. Can we help you? Notice how it changes. He doesn't know who she is, or I'm assuming he doesn't know who she is. But it's amazing how he stops in his tracks to have this conversation with this lady, even though not 3 seconds beforehand he was ready to go, cut this guy's head off. So he stops, and Abigail kneels as a sign of respect and begins talking. Okay, so the pretty lady got his attention. Verse 24. She fell at his feet and said, I accept all blame in this matter, my lord. Please listen to what I have to say. I know Nabal is a wicked and ill-tempered man. Please don't pay attention to him. He is a fool, just as his name suggests. I told you that's what his name meant. But I never even saw the young man you sent. Can you imagine David going, oh, sweetie, it's okay. It's good. We're good here. Verse 26. Now, my Lord, as surely as the Lord lives and as you yourself live, since the Lord has kept you from murdering and taking vengeance into your own hands, let all your enemies and those who try to harm you be as cursed as Nabal is. Here's a present that I, your servant, have brought you and your young men. Please forgive me if I have offended you in any way. The Lord will surely reward you with a lasting dynasty, for you are fighting the Lord's battles, and you have not done wrong throughout your entire life. We can debate that. Even when you are chased by those who seek to kill you, your life is safe in the care of the Lord your God, secure in his treasure pouch. The lives of your enemies will disappear like stones shot from a sling. When the Lord has done all he promised and made you leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Then your conscience won't have to bear the staggering burden of needless bloodshed and vengeance. When the Lord has done these great things for you, please remember me, your servant. What she says here is 100% exactly what David did last week in the passage we read before. David thought this through. I mean, I made a big deal about that in the sermon because I knew this was coming up. David said, look, I don't want to kill my predecessor while he's on the toilet. Okay, I don't want that. I don't want that reputation. I don't want that story getting around. I don't want that to be the story about how King David rises to power by murdering Saul on the toilet. I don't want that. He thought through that. He's not thinking here. And that's the problem. He is not thinking this through. Because to go and massacre this idiot Nabal and killing off his whole family just because they disrespect him, that's Saul's stuff. That's what Saul's doing. And she, being the voice of reason, comes along and says, look, if you do this, this is going to be a stain on you forever. And she comes along as the voice of reason in this crazy scenario. And David, well, we're going to read his response here in a second, but this is the role that she provides. That she is reminding David what we know he knows, because he knew it last week in the previous chapter. He knew it then. Somehow, his bloodlust kind of got away from him a little bit, but he knew this then, and he knows it now. And so she talks to him. He listens, and here's his response. Verse 32. David replied to Abigail, praise the Lord, the God of Israel, who has sent you to me today. Thank God for your good sense. Bless you for keeping me from murder and from carrying out vengeance with my own hands. Again, he knew better than this, but he let his emotions get away from him. For I swear by the Lord, the God of Israel, who has kept me from hurting you, that if you had not hurried out to meet me, not one of Nabal's men would still be alive tomorrow morning. Then David accepted her present and told her, return home in peace. I've heard what you said, and we will not kill your husband. Okay. Verse 36. When Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. He was very drunk, so she didn't tell him about her meeting with David until the next day. All right. I got a point I want to make about this, but let me finish Nabal's story. So the next morning, if you know the story, next morning, Nabal is, I'm assuming, extremely hungover. And so his wife comes in and goes, well, guess what? You did it again. You spoke disrespectfully and you ticked off David. He was on his way here to kill you, but, I stopped him again. And Nabal freaked out so hard, the guy had a stroke, dropped dead after a couple of days, and then David came and married Abigail. That's how the story ends up. So Abigail ends up being David's wife because he found a beautiful woman who was sensible and was a voice of reason, and buddy, he wasn't going to let her go, and good on him for doing it. So, but that's what we have. Now, all right, I want to look at this whole chapter because I when I was doing some study on this and preparing for tonight, I noticed something very interesting that I want to point out to you, okay? So I want to go back up to the beginning of the chapter and point out some specific verses. Okay, the first one I want you to look at with me is verse 3. So scroll back up or turn back to 1 Samuel chapter 25, verse 3. This man's name was Nabal, and his wife Abigail was a sensible and beautiful woman. Okay, keep that in mind. Here's the second one. Verse 8. Ask your own men, and they will tell you it's true. So true. So would you be kind to us, since we come to you at a time of celebration? Okay, keep verse 8 in mind. Skip down to verse 15. These men have been very good to us, and we never suffered any harm from them. Okay, this is when the servant is talking to Abigail, telling her what happened. He says this line, verse 15. All right, skip down to verse 21. This is where David's having his he's having his walking along where he's kind of talking to himself, and this is what he says. Verse 21. David had just been saying, a lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost or stolen. He's repaid me evil for good. Okay, keep that verse in mind. Skip down to verse 30. Now, verse 30 is when Abigail is explaining to David, look, you go through with this and go massacre Nabal's family. I ain't saying the guy don't deserve it. I'm just saying it's going to be a black mark on your record that you don't want. Okay, so that's what she's saying. Verse 30, she says, but when the Lord has done all he promised and has made you the leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. Okay? Keep that verse in mind. I got one more for you. The very last verse, verse 36. When Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. He was very drunk. So she didn't tell him about her meeting with David until the next day. Okay, those, how many is that? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Those 6 verses. What I found to be very interesting is the exact same word shows up in all 6 of those verses. Now, the word is, for what it's worth, is tov, rhymes with stove without the S. It's spelled, well, it's a Hebrew word. But what that word means is goodness. Okay? It means goodness. And in this passage, as I'm about to show you, goodness is actually neutral. And what I mean by that is goodness can come along, but it can be a blessing or it can be a curse, but it's the exact same word. So let me show you how this works. Back up to verse 3. When Abigail is described as a sensible and beautiful woman, that word sensible is that word. It means goodness. She had a goodness about her. As we see later, very wise, very smart, kind of was running the show with her idiot husband and doing all these, take care of things. She had a goodness inside of her. And in that moment, she's described as delightful and beautiful. Obviously, David was very taken with her. And because she had this goodness inside of her, and she was using that goodness she's, Nabal may end up dead because he freaks out and has a stroke, but everybody else is alive because of her. Because David said multiple times his intention was to raise that place to the ground with everybody in it. So that was his intention. That's what he intended to do. So she saves everybody's life, friends. That's goodness, no matter how you look at it. So she had a goodness and she used it. All right. The next time, verse 8, where the same word shows up, ask your own men, and they will tell you this is true. So would you be kind of us, since we come to you at a time of celebration? Now, this isn't David's request. Now, David has no idea that Nabal is going to respond as poorly as he does. David doesn't know that yet. But the word here says that we come to you at a time of celebration. That's that word again. It means goodness. We come to you in a time of goodness to ask for, provisions and whatever else they want to do. But David is recognizing in humility, I need something from you. That's why I'm asking for it, which would have been a pretty humbling thing for somebody in David's stature to do, to say that, I don't have enough food to feed all my guys. And, we want to have a celebration or want to have a meal or want to have something. And I can't, I need your help. So David comes to not humiliation. He comes in humbleness, which is a different thing. And he comes in humbleness to say, Nabal, I need your help. And I know goodness is coming to you. I would like for you to share that goodness with me. So where Abigail shares the goodness she has, obviously Nabal is like, the heck with that. So goodness comes to Abigail. She saves lives with it. Goodness comes to Nabal. He's hoarding it all for himself. Same word. It's the same concept. Just what you do with it makes it very different. All right. Skip down to the next one, verse 15. Now, in verse 15, this is where one of the messengers goes to Abigail to say, you better fix this because we're in trouble here. Nabal spouted his mouth off to David, and we need you to fix this. So in the servant's explanation, here's what he says, verse 15. These men have been very good to us, and we've never suffered any harm from them, which is the same thing David said. Our flocks shared some of the same areas. We were close together. We could have been fighting the whole time, but we weren't. We got along. Things were good. This word that she says, these men have been very good to us. Again, goodness. This is the goodness we're talking about. We shared goodness together. And there was a time that we did well, we were out there. We didn't have much. You were out there. You had a lot more than we did, but we got along. We made it work. So between these two groups, I guess we could say, David's men and Nabal's people, there was goodness between them, and it was working, and they were enjoying it. And because they didn't upset the apple cart and made effort to get along, everybody was enjoying goodness. Everybody was getting along. Everybody had what they needed. Everything was good. So that goodness was blessed because they were celebrating it together. Okay, let's come on to the next one. The next place that shows up is in verse 21. Now, this is where David's doing his angry walk, and he's very ticked off. So he's walking along, and David, who's kind of muttering to himself, here's what he says, verse 21. David had just been saying, a lot of good it did to help this fellow. We protected his flocks in the wilderness, and nothing he owned was lost and stolen, but he repaid me evil for good. Now, obviously, the word good there is this goodness. It's the same word again. And so what David is saying is, look, we tried to give goodness to him. In fact, we were doing it for each other. Everything was working out great when we were sharing the pastures and sharing the hillsides and so on and so forth. And we did good, and now he decided to cut off that goodness, and now I'm cutting it off too. So if he's not going to do it, I ain't doing it either. We're going to go kill everybody. Again, same word. And because this goodness was no longer extended, it extinguished. It went out. And again, same concept, same word, But once the goodness stopped flowing, it turned bad real quick. And that's kind of the precarious nature of goodness. It has to be taken care of. It can't exist on its own. Goodness can overcome some things, but if one person is going to act like a jerk like Nabal did, it can squelch goodness pretty quick. Okay, skip down to the next one I pointed out to you. This is verse 30. Now, this one's the English translation here is a little wonky, so I'll have to show you where it's at. Verse 30. When the Lord has done all he promised and has made you leader of Israel, don't let this be a blemish on your record. This is where Abigail is now speaking to David, saying, look, this is not, you don't want this. Look, I know Nabal can be toxic, and I know he can be a problem, but you don't want this blemish on your record where you go down there and massacre him and all these servants and people who really have nothing to do with it. Just Nabal. He's stupid and we can't help it. But the word shows up here where she says, right there at the beginning, when the Lord does all he has promised. If you go back to the original translation, for some reason, your translation may still have it in there, but mine drops the word out. But when it says, when the Lord has done all the good he promised, that's what the original translation says. Again, and it's the same word. When God has given you all this goodness, you're not going to want to have to deal with the blemish of slaughtered all these people, especially when the vast majority of them had nothing to do with what happened here. You don't want your hothead, you don't want your anger to bubble over and become a problem where later you're like, gosh, I really wish we had to kill all those people. You don't want to live with that kind of regret when God is blessing you and giving you goodness, because that's what you want to channel is channel this goodness to the people around you, particularly if king. You're going to have a lot of responsibility to help people live into goodness. Again, maximize that. Don't diminish it by doing this stupid thing, this rash emotional thing that you're going to go do. Think before you go this way, and that's what Abigail is encouraging David to do. And obviously, we know she was effective. And then the last time that word shows up is down in verse 36. When Abigail arrived home, she found that Nabal was throwing a big party and was celebrating like a king. He was drunk, and she'd tell him about it the next day. Where this word shows up here is, again, kind of like before. It's the word celebration. Again, that celebration, same word. It's the concept of goodness. So Nabal was saying, man, look at how much stuff I have, especially now that I didn't give any to David, and I kept it all to myself, and now it's all mine, and I get to have a party and be drunk and as stupid as I want to be and all this stuff. And that's so he was hoarding all the goodness to himself. He wasn't sharing it with his wife. She wasn't even there when this was going on. He wasn't sharing it with his servants because he was belligerent and awful. So nobody else was benefiting from this goodness but him. And we can even make the argument he really wasn't benefiting much from it either. So he kind of was burning bridges as fast as he could get gasoline on them, essentially. But I point all these out to you because this story is a kind of a roller coaster of emotions, where last week David, super level-headed, thinking ahead and being strategic and doing the right thing. Then all of a sudden he just kind of flies off the handle because a lot of emotional things happen. Samuel passed away. He kind of made peace with Saul. A lot of things going on. And then this idiot decides to just basically thumb his nose at him. And David just flies off the deep end. And he loses himself a minute. You got to love David as a character because he is so real in what he does, because we have all been there. We have done the right thing in a difficult situation and immediately dropped the ball first opportunity, which is what David does here. And if it wasn't for Abigail speaking sense to him, this could have been a real friggin' disaster with a whole bunch of dead people and David regretting what he had done. But all through here, that word goodness keeps showing up. It could be a blessing. It could be a curse. We see it do both things. That goodness that comes from God is neutral, but it's handed to us to do with, what we're going to do with it. And I think the lesson here is that use it for good. David was going to, Nabal obviously was using it for evil. David was going to use it for evil, but God sent the voice of reason through Abigail to say, David, you want to think about this a little bit. I'm not sure slaughtering Nabal and all of his servants. Not sure that's the way you want to go here. So that's my challenge to all of you here tonight is y'all have some goodness. So are you going to be like Nabal and be stupid with it? Are you going to be like David and fly off the handle with it? Or are you going to be like Abigail and be smart with it? Think about all the people Abigail saved. She saves Nabal, at least for a short time. She saves David from making a horrible mistake, and she saves everybody else on their place where they lived, all the servants and workers that saved all those people. And all because she took that goodness, that sensible that we read that she had. She took that and decided to bless everybody with it and saved a whole bunch of lives. And again, so the ball squandered it. David almost wasted it. Abigail took it and capitalized on it. And but it's the same concept. It's goodness that comes from God, and it's all about what you do with it. All right, I need a drink of water. While I'm getting a drink of water, somebody write something in the comments because any reflections on this. I wish we were live where we could actually talk, but I'd like to know if any of you have any thoughts about that. And I agree with you, Amy. Getting drunk is a horrible idea. As I drink from my cup here. Oh, hey Kim. Thanks for joining. Oh, we got a few shout outs here. Hey Janet. Glad you came in as well. Anybody got any reflections on goodness and the story of Abigail? I guess I have to say here. Anybody? If not, this is so much easier to do live than it is to sit here and wait for somebody to talk. If not, I do have the game ready. I've got the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire. Now, don't go, even because we're all going to play this one together. Because if you know the game Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, it's a team-based event. So what I need somebody to volunteer to be our player. Oh, Nick, thank you. Good to hear the story. Never heard. Yeah, this is not a very popular one for some reason, even though Abigail is great. I mean, take your sons and take your daughters and teach them the story of Abigail. Daughters, be like Abigail. Sons, look for Abigail. Because as a guy who also married his own voice of reason here tonight, I can tell you that is vitally important to men, especially to have somebody willing to speak voice of reason to you, because we can get about ourselves a little bit, and that can be a problem, as it just about was for David. And good on him for marrying that girl as fast as he could, even though she was married at the time. He died shortly thereafter. So thank you, Terry. I'm glad you enjoyed that, and again, appreciate your help earlier today. All right, does anybody want to try the game? Anybody interested in giving it a whirl? I see a few people here are dropping out. If anybody wants to do it, try the game. Here's what you're going to have to do. If anybody wants to try it, I need you to call me on the phone. If you have my number, call me on the phone. I'm going to put you on speakerphone. You're going to go live on the Bad Weather podcast. So if anybody thinks they want to try it, we'll make this a team effort here. And you're going to have to call me on my phone. So we'll see if we get any takers here. And I'm not saying my phone number over the internet, so if you don't have it, email me or something. I can get it for you. But need somebody to call me if we're going to have a player. So while we're doing that, I appreciate you all coming out to spend the evening with me here. And I think we may have a contestant here. Oh, all right. To whom am I speaking? Oh, all right. Anybody here? Hi, Lindsay Powell and crew. Say hi to everybody. What's that?
It's Ellie.
Hi, Ellie and Grant. You guys are going to have to talk if you're going to do this, okay? All right. Let me see if I got this to work here, okay? Oh, of course, this is going to mess up. Did I lose the picture? Suze, did I lose the picture?
Yeah.
Hang on. Oh, it looks right on my screen. Oh, there it is. You guys got it? Can you see it now?
10 questions.
Okay, you got 10 questions and 3 lifelines. Okay. So let me turn you up here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask these questions, and you can use one of your lifelines. Okay. So and everybody in the chat, be ready because you're going to be one of the lifelines when we get that far. All right, Ellie, are you ready?
Yes.
Ready for the first question?
Yes.
All right, here you go. Oh, hang on, I messed up. Here we go. Oh, there's your 3 lifelines. This is your explanation of the 3 lifelines. They're probably not there. They are up on the screen. So phone a friend. You're literally going to ask your mom. So hopefully she'll know the answer. We're going to poll the audience, which is where we're going to ask the chat. And you're going to get a 50-50 where I'll take away 2 wrong answers. You got it?
Mm-hmm.
All right, here we go. Here's the first question.
Okay.
Who is the pastor at Wayne Street Church? Is it Joe Schmo, Dave Bro, John Doe, or the most excellent and bodacious Reverend Tim Benjamin? And I might remind you, you have to say them exactly as I said them.
D.
All right, what does D say?
The most excellent and bodacious Rev Tim Benjamin.
Excellent. Let's see if she's right, ladies and gentlemen. Oh, no. Why is my thing messing up?
Do you really win $1 million?
No, you're not winning the $1 million. Don't you know how this game works? There it is.
Nope.
Oh. What the heck is going on with this? Oh, anyways, you're right. We all know you're right. All right, let's go on to the next one. Ready? What was the worst part of the Super Bowl halftime show? Was it rap is not music, the lack of creativity, couldn't understand a single word, or all of the above?
D. All of the above.
D, all the above. Is she right? She is all the above. She's 2 for 2. All right, you're tearing it up, Ellie. You ready for the third one?
Yes.
All right. Who is Travis Kelce dating? Is it Ariana Grande, Taylor Swift, Demi Lovato, or Lorelai McAllister?
B. Taylor Swift.
B, Taylor Swift. Are you sure?
Yes.
Taylor Swift it is. Good job. All right, you're really rocking it out. You ready for the next one?
Yep.
Who is the mayor of St. Mary's? Is it Joe Hurlburt, Mike Burkholder, Greg Foxhoven, or Don Renninger?
A. Joe Herbert.
A, Joe Hurlburt. Is she right? She is right. All right, good job. All right, next. Which of the following is not a gospel? John, Matthew, James, or Luke? Which one is
C. James.
C, James? That's your final answer?
Yes.
James it is. And I see I'm taking some verbal abuse here in the chat from Lorelai McAllister. What do you mean I spelled? Was your name not spelled right? Apparently it wasn't. I also know that you did not agree to this, which is why I did it in the first place. So, all right. You ready for the next one there, Ellie?
Yes.
All right. What is the title of our national anthem? Is it America the Beautiful, How Great Thou Art, Lift Every Voice and Sing, or the Star Spangled Banner?
D. The Star Spangled Banner.
D, the Star Spangled Banner. Very good. You got it. You're killing it. All right, ready?
What?
You got that? You got that right. You ready for the next one?
Uh-huh.
All right, here we go. Oh, a little tougher. What is the capital of Illinois? Is it Springfield, Chicago, Columbus, or Decatur? Remember, you got some lifelines here.
A. Springfield.
A, Springfield. Is that your final answer?
Yes.
You are correct. Good job. All right. Well, you haven't used any of your lifelines yet.
Yeah, use some of your lifelines if you get stuck.
That's all right if you get stuck here. All right, here's one. If you've been listening, you should know this one. Who was the woman who stopped David from killing the ball? The Queen of Sheba, Michelle, Bathsheba, or Abigail?
D. Abigail.
D. Abigail. You are correct. Good job. All right. Who was the second president of the United States? Was it James Monroe, James Madison, John Adams, or Thomas Jefferson?
What's it called?
Ask the audience.
You want to ask the audience?
Yes.
All right. Chat. Everybody, who was the second president of the United States? Let's see what they say.
That's your time.
Yeah, I'm going to get some time. Everybody in the chat, who was the second president of the United States?
Mhm.
All right. Who was the second president?
John Adams.
John Adams. The chat seems to be a little bit divided on this one. But
John Adams.
C. John Adams would be correct. Nicely done. And I noticed my wife. Yeah, that's right. Be careful about what Susan tells you. Did I say she was sensible? What the heck was I talking about? Okay. All right. Next. Okay, here we go. Ready? What is the fear of peanut butter called? Golgothophobia, Haganophobia, allergenophobia, or agotophobia?
You spelled A wrong, but
What are other lifelines?
You've got take off 2 wrong answers and call a friend.
Take off 2 wrong answers.
take off 2 wrong answers.
All right, I'll tell you, it is not B and it is not C.
Not B or it's not
B is spiders,
E.
right?
Galaphalopia. Okay.
is that your final answer?
B.
No, we mean D.
I tell you what, how about you use your other lifeline?
Okay, use the other lifeline.
What lifeline?
You better call a friend on this one.
I think it's A. Oh, I'm calling Pastor Tim.
You're calling Pastor Tim? Well, Pastor Tim is going to give you some advice. Pastor Tim thinks it's letter D.
B.
D.
And you are correct. How about that? Archibutulophobia.
Well, you spelled Gothiaba.
Yeah, I know. The other 3, I'm going to be honest with you, I just made all 3 of those up. So, and I believe that makes you our big winner. You got all 10.
Yay. So what do we do now?
Yeah, you're going to win a prize valued at less than $4. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I'll have something for you.
My good music from. Oh, you said Ellie.
Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, some of those I just pushed a bunch of random keys on my keyboard to make up those words. So
Can I have $4?
I said less than $4, not $4. So
Then you said 3.
All right.
hey, thanks for being on the Bad Weather Podcast, guys. All right, I'm gonna hang up on you. See you guys. All right. Hey, that's all I got. Hey, that was a pretty exciting round there, wasn't it? And apparently we're gonna have to do a little review of our first couple of presidents. So, all right. Well, I appreciate you guys coming out tonight and being a part of the Bad Weather Podcast. Hopefully next week we'll be able to do this live in person because A, it's easier, and B, discussions are a lot more fun that way. I hope you guys enjoyed that. Any more feedback about the story of Abigail? We'll be revisiting her on. Well, we'll be revisiting her on Sunday if we're able to have church. I don't know if any of you have looked at the weather for this Sunday. We might be back for the Bad Weather Podcast on Sunday too. We'll have to kind of watch and see. But they're calling for the snowpocalypse this weekend. So if you got any extra prayers to say for weather mercy, that would be awesome. So. Hey, I appreciate you guys coming out to hang out with me here tonight, and I don't know what else do I have to share with you. Ellie, I will have a gift valued at less than $4 for you at some point before Sunday, hopefully, and hopefully I'll see you then. So, you guys take care. Thanks for continuing the study of David with me, and we got a couple more weeks with David, and then we're going to be on to the disciples. Actually, we're going to be doing during Lent, so we'll look forward to those conversations as well. But I appreciate you guys all coming out. Everybody have a great night. Please, 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 if you're going to be outside tonight or early in the morning, be very careful. It is slick as all get out. The whole world is a skating rink right now, and I don't want any of you to fall. So be careful. Go wash your hands and keep yourself healthy, and go turn on the electric blanket and have a long winter's night nap, I guess, tonight. So you guys have a great week, and I will see you soon. Thanks, everybody.